Hello, welcome to this Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and it is an exciting day to be in my bunker, the Hunker in the Bunker, day 10, Stream Street day 10. I'm looking forward to being here. It's midday, and we're live every day. I've got a really great guest. I've said day too many times, so I don't know what to. I don't know what to follow that up with, so I've really messed it up. But I have a really great guest for us all. I have got the wonderful Mr. Dark Fantastic Mills. Gary, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me on.
Would you prefer me calling you Gary for the show or Dark Fantastic Mills?
Gary's fine.
You
You know,
sure?
let's keep it informal. Yes, yes, please.
Well, I thought that would be fun. But yeah, so we are. I'm very much a huge fan of your work, but we haven't had an opportunity to talk very much, and so I'm looking forward to doing that today. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. It's going to be, as you talked off air, a fun ramble, which is good. But before we go on to that, I just want to say hello to everyone who's joined us live, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Big love to you. Thank you for subscribing if you do, and thank you for being on the Honest Wargamer Patreon and supporting the show, whoever you are, even if you can't anymore because you've got work, don't worry about that. Just a big love if you ever have or intend to. I just want to say hello to everyone who's joined us currently. Tanker has said the amount of support this guy's thrown events all around the world is credit to his commitment to grow the hobby and community. It is. Bit of a hero you are, Gary, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to you. And then that is one honey voice. Thank you. Can that be the first thing, Gary? But while you say hello and introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, can we all just take a moment to appreciate how great Gary's voice is? It's just glorious. So yeah, after you, sir.
Oh, I feel very self-conscious now. It's a terrible build-up to the thing. So yeah, hi. So my name's Gary, and I created Dark Fantastic Mills a couple of years ago to create scenery for the Age of Sigmar world and worlds beyond it. So that's who I am.
Good. We get some more. You get so much love in the chat, by the way. You are a legend. Jimmy, who is an actual hero over in Australia, says DFM is gorgeous. He's been great seeing his terrain. Thanks for the support. Dave Dogue over on YouTube said, "Is that real terrain?" It is. So in the chat, I'm going to post a link to the Dark Fantastic Mill website. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then Trog the Bestest, so that's one of my favourite people, Sir Trog, has said, massive shout out to Gary for supplying the Slayer of Kings for the WS10 team event recently. So just how's it feel being a hero to everyone? 'Cause it sounds great.
It sounds great. It feels very strange. I mean, definitely, I've been in the dark mills for the pretty much just toiling away, and don't really hadn't really appreciated just how widespread things had got. I mean, it's definitely became quite a strange experience towards the end of last year when almost every weekend there'd be events all around the planet with trophies being handed out and all the rest of it. I mean, it's really nice, and it's a whole part of like such an amazing community. To be involved with it all is very enjoyable, but that's lovely. Thank you, everybody.
Well, we'll get onto that in a bit, but before we do, I'd like to just get to know you, the man behind the mask, if you have a
Yeah.
mask. So where are you based, and how did you get into just Warhammer generally?
Oh yeah, just a general background. So I'm up in Scotland near Stirling, which some of you will have heard of because we've got a great local gaming centre, Common Ground Games, which has been really strong for tournaments and things. So this is where we're based, and aside from the Dark Fantastic Mills, I'm an animator, which is we'll come back round to, and that's where the skills and the kind of ideas behind the set design and the models sort of came from. And as far as Warhammer is concerned, I'm afraid to say I'm one of these people that have been in it since day one. I believe I was maybe 16 or 17 when Warhammer came out many years ago, so that'll date me. Maybe I was younger than that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I was probably old enough to know better. But we got into it, and so I've been playing it off and on, mostly off since then. It's a classic story of getting into Warhammer and then going to university and stopping. But about 12, 13 years ago, the kids discovered the models in the shoebox. It's a familiar scenario to lots of dads of a certain age. and got it out and thought, oh yeah, yeah, Warhammer. I remember that was pretty good. So I had a look at what Games Workshop was doing and was kind of amazed actually at how it had moved on in that time. So this would be seventh edition Warhammer, and my friends who I used to play with, we carried on playing board games and playing and role playing games and seeing each other all the time. So I just said to them, have you still got your armies? And they were like, oh yeah, yeah, we still do have them. One of them, Mark, in fact, Rob, you know Mark, happened to live in Nottingham. So we thought, let's go and check out this Warhammer world. And that was basically that. So the last 12 years, I've just been like, just pretty much nothing but Warhammer, really. So
Yeah, well, yeah, Mark's wonderful. Big fan of Mark.
yeah,
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 a great guy to show you around everything. So that is a storied past. Truth be told, that's got some
yeah.
lineage.
Sort of dipping in and out of it and sort of keeping an eye on it, yeah, as it was going on. But certainly, I think it was a good time. I mean, in terms of like where GW was going, I'm really glad I jumped in then because we got to enjoy the eighth edition, which I quite liked, and started going to tournaments and doing the kind of tournaments at Warhammer World initially, and then local ones up here in Scotland, and then got to go through the whole end times thing, which was pretty amazing actually. I think it really end times that really sort of hooked me in, to be honest.
Was it the narrative that hooked you in, like the model release?
Yeah, it really was actually. I had never really paid much attention. This is going to people crucify me. I never really paid much attention to the background. I quite liked. It sounds terrible. I kind of got into it a little bit, like those later army books. The thing that sort of hooked me in was the Vampire Accounts book, and the backstory was quite exciting with the kidnapped princess and all that stuff. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, this sounds quite interesting. And then when I realised that the first end thing appears, and it was like, oh, this is actually a story. But in terms of like reading Black Library or doing any of that kind of stuff, not so much. But I just thought the End Times books were just brilliant, actually. The writing and the ideas and the scope of it. Obviously, the ending was quite a surprise. But, but as somebody who maybe wasn't hugely personally invested in the old world, I think I just kind of rolled with it and just thought this is pretty ballsy of them to go out there and just do that.
I like it. I picture you in the local gaming store, and everyone's just like throwing their arms in the air and screaming, and angry faces are pointing, and you're there just kind of like book open, like it's kind of cool actually. Yeah, I really like this.
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. What are they going to do now? So yeah, no, but it was definitely. But I think, for all the ins and outs of it, I think if you go back, I don't know who's still got. Maybe we still got the books here. I reread them last year. I think went through the whole lot and was just like, oh, this is so great. I mean, like just an amazing piece of work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Same, exactly the same. I thought I honestly liked them. I think what was good about them is they created a cohesive narrative, whereas army books before then traditionally what they'd done is just they'd set the scene, and then the story was never going to progress from that point onwards. But actual progression is something you can follow along. It seems really obvious that it's something that they should do.
Yes, yes, it does. But you can sort of see why there is and there isn't. I mean, if anybody, I don't know if everybody's seen it, I wouldn't be able to give you the link, but you might have noticed it. There's online interviews with James Hewitt, the games designer,
Yes.
about his experience at Games Workshop doing that. And I only read the first part of the interview, and it was really illuminating and informative about that kind of thing. Because obviously with my other hat on as an animator and working in television, I'm absolutely used to all the kind of completely asshat decisions that get made about things. Like, and then you bring it out and people are like, why did you decide to do that? And you're like, well, I don't know. I mean, somebody said they thought it was a good idea, so we just did it.
Yeah.
So
So
I've
yeah,
never worked in the games industry, but I get the sort of general way these things tend to go. So yeah, it didn't surprise me. So
that would be the interview with Goonhammer, right? That he did recently.
that's
That's the one.
yes.
Yeah, so Goonhammer article with James Hewitt is fantastic. James Hewitt, really nice guy. In the early days of me setting up the Wargamer was actually, I had quite a few chats with him. So yeah, really nice and just really upfront about stuff, which he readily admits it's a tough experience for him because he's got friends who still, he was at that company for a long time. He's still got friends there. Yeah, it's a look behind the veil, which, as you pointed out, is sometimes asinine but hilarious.
No, I don't think it does any harm, and I think it's really helpful sometimes for everybody else to kind of see that there isn't. Sometimes it isn't their master plan, or maybe there is a master plan, but there's three of them, and one of them won, and it doesn't really sync with what everybody else was doing. But it's when creative things go slightly wrong, that's usually why. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think you should never attribute basically anything they do to malevolence and only to stupidity. There's a quote from someone more famous than, like, yeah, some famous person about that, but I can't remember who.
Absolutely every time.
I want to say a big thank you to Dateless, by the way, for just subscribing. Said two of the best voices in Age of Sigmar. I like listen. I can't wait for Gary's show to just be on all the time because I'm listening. I want to say also hello to everyone. Battlechode, Tristan's out in Canada taking his kid for a walk, so that's good. Hope you're well. Angle, K-Dread. I saw her come pin earlier. Hope she's okay. Yeah, big love to you all. Desert Sketch, hello as well. Uh, okay, yeah, I like the end times. I thought that they were great. It was a real positive step forward into them actually understanding and creating narrative. And like you say, that article kind of bridges the gap for that behind the scenes story between the end times and the start of Age of Sigmar. So based where you were, like you said, everyone was going. Some people were quite rightly annoyed, and other people were like excited about the future. In Scotland, like what was the reaction to Age of Sigmar and its introduction?
Well, it was much like everywhere else. I think to some extent there was, we'll put it this way, the week before the final End Times book dropped, the club was just playing Warhammer. That was it. Nothing but. I'd say the week after, it was just War Machine. I don't think anybody was playing it at all. Once the old world was destroyed, and then when Age of Sigmar rules dropped, oh my God, that was just it was pretty bad. I mean, people were actually, they weren't abusive, but they just looked at you like there was something. You were clearly, a bit, touched in the head or something if you were actually playing Age of Sigmar.
Is that a new experience for you? Because that's how just basically everyone's always treated me and looked at me. So it wasn't new for
No,
me.
no, I think they hadn't quite pegged me, and maybe at that point they did. I don't know. So anyway, it was, but that was just some people. I mean, obviously and it was a sort of dyed and real thing. But as I said to you briefly before the show started, what was really nice in Scotland was there was a bunch of people, a small group, like Scott and Stu and all the kind of the guys that from running the events, who were like, okay, let's do it, and we just grabbed the Mohammer points
hmm
and just played those for the first tournament. And we had a tournament quite early on, and of course, as everybody discovered when they actually played it and played it with properly, as it were, with ignoring all the stupid rules and the compendium stuff and sticking with the points and using the scenarios, it's just such a brilliant tournament game. So it grew from that small group. So there was probably maybe 15 of us, 16 of us at the first tournament, and we just kept turning up and playing these things. And slowly, I think people they seem to be having fun over there. They would drift over, and the next tournament, two more people would join in, and it would grow and grow and grow. So it grew up from there, and has been pretty strong after the first year, I guess.
Yeah, it exploded, I think, and it's still. I mean, the only thing that's been able to slow its pace has been a global pandemic. So,
Oh, completely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's good, those early adopters, and I feel like those people are always like very positive-minded people. I think in all of the communities where you found those people
Yeah.
who created those kind of like small spaces, that they were really like forward thinking, and then that's led to a very progressive and competent tournament scene, which has been cool. So who are some of the prominent figures in the local community putting on those tournaments?
Well, you've got John Harper, who lots of people probably know online. He's been doing tournaments from day one, and Scott, and Stu West up in Orc Shetland. Is it Orkney or Shetland? You'll kill me for not knowing which one it is.
It's okay, I'm English, so I
Orkney.
think it's all the same.
No, God, it's all not the same. Orkney and Shetland. They have a special cup every year. They fight over
Oh, is that
at
true?
the event. Oh yeah, they have a complete side event between the two islands. Whoever's turned up from Orkney and Shetland, they just have their own thing going on. That's kind of like part of part of the general melee. Um, and I'll forget everybody else who's been doing stuff. Lots of people. I mean, basically, yeah, every couple of weeks, it felt like at one point, as you say, the pandemic has put a
Yeah.
sharp halt to all of that. So the last one was Kevin Yarrickson, who's Fall of the Old World, was the last one that managed to get in under the wire before everybody realized that congregating in groups was probably a bad idea. So
Yeah, yeah, and sharing dice. I think it's when I discovered that people no longer wanted me to spit my dice into their mouth. That it truly struck home that it's not something I should be doing.
no, no.
MJ Pegasus says I spent a year up in Northern Scotland, had no idea there was such a scene up there. That's like I'm gonna try. We spoke on the phone before. I think the Scottish players are like. There's loads of them. They're super serious. They're super into it, is what I mean. And they're also a barrel of laughs. And so we should definitely try and like extol them more. Truth be told, and get them out there to the world. But maybe that's just you, MJ Pegasus. Maybe you're just a racist to Scottish people. Think about that for a moment. Yeah, look yourself in the mirror. So, what armies do you play? What really? Have you got a favourite army that you're all about?
Well, Nurgle really is the one right from day one, really, I guess. From the Chaos Powers came out. So I've been collecting Nurgle and playing it off and on for forever, really. So it's very good. And under Age of Sigmar, the army I really got into was the Seraphon. After the first General's Handbook came out with the teleporting in it. So I played a lot of that, and just got the new book, and it's so annoying not being able to get out to tournaments with the new book.
Yeah, and wreck everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I've got all the Bastillodons already ready to go. So and the rest of it, and of course the Dread Saurian. Oh my God! So I've been running a Dread Saurian for a long time. Back when it was terrible, and then back when it was still terrible, but when you could teleport it to places where it could do alarming amounts of damage if you rolled the dice correctly. So getting one out with that stat line would have been good. And then bits and pieces. I'm one of these hobby
Butterflies.
sort of butterflies, absolutely. That'll pick up a unit and a bit of an army. So the thing I've been really getting into in the last wee while was Warcry. And I think for that reason that I could suddenly grab all those 8 guys that I painted 2 years ago, and add one person and it's a war band and all that kind of stuff. So that's been pretty good. So, but yeah, it's a Nurgle, and I'm quite looking forward to maybe painting up all the unpainted demons and just sort of expanding it. Because like every hobbyist, I've just got this vision in mind of that 10,000 point completely painted army that you just want to, array across the table.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. You tell.
yeah.
I told Nathan about 2 years ago. I was like, Nathan, I'm gonna get all my chaos painted, and we're gonna play like chaos versus your stuff. And he was like, yeah, man. And we're still not there. Like,
Still not. Yes. Like I say to everybody on the planet, every wargamer on the planet knows this is our chance. This is the only chance you're going to get. Like you know in your heart of hearts, you've done the maths, you've worked out that doing a regular job and everything, you'd never have enough time to paint that stuff. It's just not going to happen. But over the next God knows how long, we might have time to.
This is our time.
Up.
Yeah.
This is our time.
See, this is an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it's a complete. Terrible opportunity, horrible. And I did have the actual flu about 4 years ago, and it was bloody awful. So I definitely don't want to, catch whatever this thing is. But in the meantime, while we're healthy, we should enjoy the moment. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. By just staying the hell inside, you should make sure you drink lots of water, stay healthy.
Yep.
I couldn't agree with you more. We've had some stuff in the chat. MJ Pegasus says Dark Fantastic Mills reads Black Library. It should be a thing. Owen Jackson says I was adamant Gary was going to say dwarves. His dwarven self scenery is gorgeous. And honestly, COVID can go suck itself, says Twitch Village Idiot. It may take my freedom, but they will never take my pile of shame. Gary,
No, I
go
have
on.
to say that the dwarven scenery was inspired by my friendly feud with my friend Mike Callahan up here, and it's entirely for my Skaven to run a mock on. It's got nothing to do with having dwarves. Though I do have some Caradhran overlords who I do like very much, and they will be seeing some paint and some love over the next few weeks and months. But yeah, the dwarven scenery started off as actually a bit of a joke. But yeah,
Okay,
it's
well,
uh,
it's
it's
gonna
good.
be really fun. I'd like to talk about that. So obviously you create a bunch of things. Let's get into like how that started and what and
Yeah,
where you were at the beginning.
well, I think it goes back to a lot of things to do with Warhammer itself, and actually that's kind of the bigger picture about why I'm doing it as well, which we'll get to. But um, kind of it it is inspired in lots of different ways by Age of Sigmar, not just the setting, but obviously very much so in terms of the kind of the wild scope of it that you can do anything you want, which to a designer or an artist is just like right, you're off the leash. Which I think again is why the Black Library output has been so fantastic for Age of Sigmar, because the writers are just like, well, they can literally whatever you come up with will fit into this universe that's being created. So from a scenery point of view, but from a gameplay point of view, it was the fact that you could move around and actually use the terrain as a set. It was no longer, an abstract thing that just was there to stop troops from, moving in a certain direction.
Mm.
Um, which which kind of goes back to I've told this story on Stu's thing, but one of the first things that I kind of did when I got back into Warhammer was built a very elaborate castle. In the way you did get quite excited. Christmas holidays, the boys who were quite young at the time, my sons, they had one of those kits that you could cast little plaster bricks in. So we cast tons of these bricks, and then we built the castle, and I'm still very proud of it. It's somewhere it's kicking around. But of course, the first time, so this was seventh going to eighth edition. So the first time Mark and Dan, my other friends, came up to play Warhammer, got the castle out. Oh, fantastic, looks brilliant. And then of course we realized it's fucking useless in the game. It just stood in the middle of the table, getting in the way. So
Yes.
so then so that after the first game, it got pushed from the middle of the table to the side of the table, and then the third game, it just wasn't on the table at all, and it just gathered dust.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I agree. Like, I'd just like to touch on that because, yeah, same. Like, terrain was almost like not even a consideration because it didn't play any impact in the game, and also, which is why I think in some of the earlier editions, especially of competitive Warhammer, you saw some pretty Spartan and they weren't. I wouldn't call them cinematic tables. Let's be polite to them. I don't know if you experienced those in seventh, eighth edition, but that's how they look to me. Which is not how I think of terrain nowadays. Age of Sigmar events, they tend to be pretty phenomenal, often due to you. But like, yeah, there's a degree up. So yeah, the usefulness was yeah, not a thing.
Yeah, it wasn't. And so you'd see these amazing dioramas and tables and stuff they would put in White Dwarf, and you think nobody plays on those because it just doesn't do anything. So again, when we've got the rules, the 4 pages of rules for Age of Sigmar, I was a holiday at the time, and I remember reading them and just going, "Oh, hold on a minute, this is quite interesting." Like, first of all, it's amazing that you could condense it into 4 pages. From a design perspective, that's like incredibly clever. I know that everybody at the time thought it was super dumb, but obviously, it's actually quite a feat to achieve that level of kind of honing of something. But as soon as we got back and played it, we got all the scenery out, including the castle, and it was like fantastic. This actually does something in the game now. It
Mm.
has an impact. You can use it. You're not even garrisoning it. You sort of are because you're on it, but the ability of troops to actually move around, and therefore you can create a real world sense that you're defending a broken wall because people can only get so many guys up next to you and all this kind of stuff. It was really, really fantastic. So that was then. But the scenery I do, so I was doing a lot of scratch built stuff and all the rest of it and bits and pieces. But time is very precious and all the rest of it. So it was hard to kind of fit in as much of that as I would have liked. But then dialing it forward, I guess, a couple of years, we got a 3D printer in to do some animation stuff, to do some character models, to print them out so we could show them to a client. And one of the guys who was working with me, a French guy, was also into Warhammer. So we got these first prints off it and was like, oh, these are really good. They were much better than I was expecting because it wasn't a very expensive printer. It was just one of the kind of entry level ones.
Mm.
And Victor and I were both like, oh, Warhammer, we could use this to make things. And so, and so I designed the first bit of scenery, which I think is a kind of death statue, which is still in the range, and printed three or four of them and photographed them and put them on Twitter. And that was really it. As soon as I put them up there, just like people were like, where did you get those? Where can I get them? Do you sell them? I was like, yeah, okay. And it sort of snowballed from there. And really that became my hobby and has been for the last, 2 years. Is doing this stuff, which has meant the armies have been somewhat neglected. But
Yeah, that especially if it's your like I think common vernacular is your side hustle.
yeah, I joked to people. I said I've cracked the 4 day week. Unfortunately, I've got two jobs which both take 4 days, so I'm actually doing that's what it's been like. And with brilliant timing, I'd kind of organized things and arranged stuff so that I could go full time on Dark Fantastic Mills for the summer
Oh,
last month. Yeah. So, but that was, intentionally or unintentionally, that is definitely what I'm doing now because, as people might have heard, the film and television world has completely shut down.
yeah.
It's like
It
absolutely zero.
yeah, just stopped. So as and you may have heard, yeah, like being a DJ and a nightclub
Yes.
promoter, same thing. Like just
Same
all
thing. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
congregations of people, useless. But thankfully, I've been watching laying brick videos online. So when Nathan needs my help, finally calls me up to the show. Can't wait to start laying some brick, probably. Or probably I won't
I,
even be allowed to do that. Just mixing cement will probably be my job. Uh,
I don't. Yes, you can be Nathan's brick boy.
yeah,
You just mix his. That's it. I
that's
think that's the phrase.
that's often what I am anyway. Let's be honest on the show. Uh, right, so I would also like to touch on that a moment and say that one of the things that I found about Age of Sigmar, specifically in the terrain, was because more often than not, we rolled the scenery dice or we rolled up what our scenery was going to be, like the type of scenery. Like mystical, if anyone remembers the mystical days where you would just have a whole unit just sat doing nothing but staring at a rock or something. It was some dark times. But yeah,
Yes, I know that one.
but
Yeah.
because you were defining what type of terrain, not as in like it was physically something, but you were defining what type of like magical property it had in the scenery table, that it felt more like you were paying more attention to it on the tabletop. Oh, that's what I thought anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that was an interesting way for them to go with the rules. And again, one of those things. Early games, we would quite often just ignore it and just say, oh, "Let's not bother playing with that." But as time went on, people did because they realised that it could be quite interesting and give you a bit of an edge, or not, as the case may be. In the case of mystical terrain, I remember having one game where a Bastillodon failed its test every single turn and did nothing. That was spectacular. But it did things. But the there was other things going on as well, which was quite interesting. Which was that the quality of the painting of the armies definitely improved, I thought, and has continued to do so to the point now where it's really quite ridiculous how good some of the tournaments looked.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Sorry, carry on.
yeah, no, so I think that's really encouraged. That I felt that was something else that encouraged me to start doing this and expand the range of scenery that could be on the table because it just felt like right, this all needs to look it all needs to come together. It needs to be like a good looking cohesive table that tells a story that's got these two brilliant looking armies on it. Because when that happens, Warhammer's just like the most amazing thing, isn't it? I mean, it's just fantastic looking.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things for me is experiencing. So obviously, Games Workshop made their terrain for Age of Sigmar, which has had little to no update, with the exception of. I mean, we had that Stormcast thing recently, the Stormbolt stuff, but it felt so static, and every board looked the same. And then when you finally went anywhere else where there was some other terrain, or you had some homemade terrain, or yeah, someone had bought it from somewhere else, you were like, wow, this looks really different. And then when you move away from Realm of Battle boards and you start playing on mats, and you're like, okay, this tells a whole story now. I understand where I am. And the problem that Almost Games Workshop gave themselves and not that it's a bad problem to have, is they created such a broad scope and imaginative environment in which you could set your battles. It could be in the realm of life, but it could be halfway up a fountain that's floating on a rock through space. It could be any of those things. So you could design the most amazing boards, but they didn't provide you with any materials to do so. So I imagine people like yourself like read some of those things or saw some of those things and were able to just jump out where they wanted, right?
Oh, that, yeah, for sure. And the first set of campaign books that they brought out for Age of Sigmar, as bonkers as they were also that side of it, the craziness, the kind of descriptions and the mad paintings of these crazy worlds with like, waterfalls of liquid metal that were being frozen by ice drakes and then heated up by other things. All of that stuff. You're just like, oh my god, that looks amazing. That should be fantastic. And seeing the opportunity, we're seeing but yeah, that's the thing. They've created a problem for themselves, but not really. I mean, the thing is,
like I said, it's a good problem to have, right? Like
it's a good problem to have. Yeah,
yeah.
they've created a world where lots of different people could make things themselves or make things to sell that can bring that to life. And none of us, we can almost all avoid stepping on each other's toes because there's so many things you could do that, like, it's just almost endless. The ideas or possibilities you could come up with, and 3D printers are very good as well, obviously, for facilitating that kind of thing, because you can make small, in fact, you print to order, so you're not having all those problems of thinking, oh, how many people, would 200 people buy this thing? Is it worth getting it cast and doing all that kind of stuff? It doesn't really, that consideration isn't so much there, which is great for scenery because it can be so personal. So some of the things I've made, we really sold hardly any of them, but I made them for myself. I wanted it for the table. I thought, right, so we'll make that, and that's great. And if people buy it, they don't. And then other things, we've sold a lot of because they've kind of touched a nerve and have got a sort of a wider popularity. So, but it's possible to do that, which I don't think would have been. It's not really possible doing it the way GW makes things.
Yeah, and I think that having that available is a big deal. So I've got there was a picture previously on the screen if you guys were watching, and obviously you can go onto the Dark Fantastic Mills website, just Google it, and I'm looking at some stuff. The first thing I've got up as an image is it's like a death necropolis sort of setting. Which is fancy. So, going into starting to design some things, did you just start off printing some stuff off, or did you have a design philosophy in mind? Like, what was your approach to it
Yeah, no, oh gosh, the approach. It's designing. I think it's very much like you're thinking about doing set designs for a show or for like a comic book or something, and you're trying to come up with like some sort of visual kind of idea, like a little sort of something that's slightly different. I mean, one of the things I'm quite keen on doing is making sure that everything is different to what's already out there. So, there's a lot of things already catered for in terms of medieval houses and castles and things like that. So it has to be slightly different with a weird twist on it to kind of make it something interesting and unique. And so the Death Necropolis thing, I think I was just doodling, and the idea of the sculpted bones kind of forming the forms of the pillars, and also the kind of death's head thing with the cowl and everything, and then the sort of the pointy hat, which may or may not be reminiscent to another death icon's pointy hat. That sort of those sort of things coming together, but kind of subtly. The inspiration behind it is as if it's in the realm of death, but it's people have built it. They've heard of the Big N, but they've not seen him. They don't really know what he looks like, so they've come up with their version of it. So it's slightly like, it's got that sort of feel to it, but it's not. It's its own thing, really. So that was, and that was the kind of idea there. And then I'll kind of expand out and work out what are the basic elements that are needed to make this into enough stuff to kind of make a range that will go on the table, and hopefully keep adding to those over time. Really, slowly expanding out.
So it's actually got like a story, like that you like as you, because that's obviously how the designers work for Games Workshop, right? You have a concept designer who takes some of the story and starts like doodling it down into images or art, and then the model guys, and sometimes they're the same people, but oftentimes not, and then they move forward and they start attaching some story to it. I love that that's your approach, because that seems to be an approach that's done there as well. I wonder if that's a general approach in the industry, maybe.
I think it is. I think it is. Well, I think it's a general approach. If you read any kind of concept art design books, and about people's approach to doing these things, one of the key things is if you bring that to it, a bit of that to it, in terms of like thinking about backstory and thinking about, what's a recurring motif for these people. Do they like to carve this shape or do they like to carve that shape? If you just add that stuff in, it just imbues it with a sense of place that it won't otherwise. If it's just random, people sort of pick up on that. Whereas if there's a sense of purpose behind it, then I think people. I mean, it sounds a bit highfalutin, doesn't it? But it is how you have to do it, really, to get that across. And to me, these are like little film sets or little game level sets that we're putting our toy soldiers on. And if it works, if it succeeds, that's what it should feel like when you look at it. When you see the table in your mind's eye, you should go, oh yeah, this is like a place and not just a collection of things with soldiers running in between them.
Yeah, agreed. Like whenever I put some stuff down, I'm like, Nate, that's where the villagers are.
Yes.
Like I'll defend this bit, and then he's just like, I hate you. And I've got like some, I've got some objective markers which are actually some produce. So there's like pumpkins and cabbages and stuff, and I used to always put those down as our objective markers, and Nathan would quite often as not run away from the objectives because he refused to capture the cabbages to win the game.
He's just got to get into the story. Just let yourself go.
Thank you, Nate.
Role play it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Before we move on, I just got a couple of questions from the chat. I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here, because Andrew has asked a question about where is good for tournaments in Scotland, or maybe there's a resource for where would be good to get tournaments in Scotland, right?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. Oh no, somebody will kill me for not knowing what the resource is. There was definitely a website set up, but Common Ground Games, which is in Stirling, is the place where we usually get together. And they run things, tournaments for every single system as well. Sadly, obviously not at the moment, but the so from Star Wars Legion to Bolt Action, War Machine, everything. There's usually something going on every weekend. So
yeah,
and they've got a Facebook page and they have a listing there of upcoming events.
Andrew, we'll try and get to that. But some of these people to follow on Twitter, Dave Fraser's in the chat is sending you some links. Follow those people, shoot them a message. Everyone,
yes.
That's the best thing about this community. Inbox someone and they will help you, guaranteed. Like, it's just what they're about. Also, Owen Jackson, one of my favourite people ever, has just messaged and said he forever will be calling his Nick Ash the Big N.
Yeah.
He also said, I think Gary's background in game design animation looks really shines through. The scenery doesn't just look like toys. Instead, it looks like a setting and a place, which I think...
This is a good point. A friend of mine pointed this out. He said we were talking about GW scenery, and he said it's interesting because they kind of design everything as if it's a model. Like it's like everything is a figure, so it's all really detailed. And you don't really need to do that with sets. Obviously, with locations and backgrounds, you can be much more, just keep it a bit simpler, because and there's definitely two schools, isn't there? Because there's the kind of Jeff Darrow comic, who's a comic artist who draws every single bullet and every dent and every bullet on a page, and it looks amazing. It's just visual overload. It's just stuff going on everywhere. But then the other side of it, you've got more, things like the old Batman animated series with very simple backgrounds, very moody, just dark shapes, and they both work incredibly well. So there is scope for all that kind of stuff. So I think with some of my, like for instance, the dwarven scenery, somebody mentioned earlier, it's deliberately quite simple. I've not put on as many little details and carvings and twists and stuff as quite often you might see, because if I was painting a background for a cartoon or something, I wouldn't bother with that. I would just kind of go, right, dwarven scenery, it's these shapes. Poof, poof, there you go. And in fact, if you look at the Lord of the Rings films, a lot of the background stuff is quite simple because it detracts you from what you're meant to be looking at, which is, so in our case, what you really should be looking at are the armies. They're the stars of the show.
Oh my God,
And
that's really good advice. So if I pick my army awfully but put really nice terrain around it, yeah.
it'll distract people from it. Yeah, yeah, totally. That's the flip side. You could definitely go that way with it as well. The grey army looks great next to the heavily detailed, highly painted scenery. Definitely.
Well, that's a fun. It's really interesting hearing about your influences. Actually, Scrivo in the chat is just saying Darrow is amazing and Scottish. He thinks maybe,
Mhm.
and Scotty Jock in the chat is saying that your Nurgle army is a thing of beauty too. Um,
Oh,
so
loves it.
yeah, I don't know who Scotty Jock is. It could be anyone in Scotland,
No,
surely.
that's Scott, the big guy. It's one of our. He runs. Oh my God, now my brain's going. Tempest
Oh,
at the
fantastic.
beginning of. Yeah,
Okay, oh, brilliant. Oh, yeah. So Andrew, who's in the chat, Scott might be able to direct you to where you need to be, and
yeah.
I'll try and put some of those resources out and on blast later. Again, more phrases. I watched too many TikTok videos last night, and now I can't stop saying cool hype words. There's someone listening right at home now. The podcast is just turned off. Gone. That's enough for you today, Rob. Fuck you. I don't want
Yeah.
any more to do with that.
You've got to pace yourself, Rob. We're in here for the long run, aren't we? So.
Yeah. So I'm only doing about an hour and a half a day. Otherwise, it's going to get super weird. So yeah, could you explain influences any more? Like, I like that as a design philosophy. Just like having not simpler, but like less maybe detailed scenery. Is there any other influences or any other kind? Is there any resources people could look up to take up some of this information?
I think the thing is, if you're interested in that side of things, definitely always worth picking up are the art of books that appeared. So you got the art of, Solo from the Star Wars film recently, or the art of any of the Disney films or anything like that, because they're really full of the concept designs. Computer games, the same thing. There's amazing resources there. If you want the art of Fallout, is a really good one for just loads of ideas about post-apocalyptic kind of nuclear shelters and things. And it's not about, obviously it's not about just stealing stuff from people. Obviously, if you're scratch building stuff, fire away. It's great. It's a great way of learning how to do stuff. But it's a really good way of kind of seeing into the process that goes in behind it. And I think it could be a really exciting time for tabletop gaming as more companies and more people adopt that approach to it, because there's no reason not to. I mean, I was chatting to some friends who do stop motion animation, and they were saying, "Oh, what are you doing?" I've been doing this stuff, and I was showing them some videos of the scenery, and they were just like, going, "Oh, it's great! It's like a little set." We want to get cameras and do some animation inside of it. So that's a whole. There's a whole kind of that world of games and films and animation, the resources around that, and finding out a little bit about the concept artists. And there's definitely a crossover. I mean, my Twitter feed is gaming and concept arts, really, and there's still quite a lot of people follow each other, and you can see lots of different things there. I think it's quite inspiring. You'd be inspired by color schemes and things like that as well. So
Yeah,
it's good.
I agree. One of the things I do more like on my personal Twitter is anyone who follows me, I follow back. Like I do a quick check to make sure they're not mental, and then if they are, I hit follow straight away.
Straight away.
Straight away. Yeah, but and sometimes I go actively seeking things, but I think that's a real great way of exposing yourself sometimes to stuff you weren't necessarily expecting for creativity wise. I found that useful anyway.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting crossover. I mean, one of the things I think it's interesting maybe as well, especially on the gaming front as well, is and it's a bigger conversation. And I don't think we're there yet, but I can see a time coming when we're starting to think about level design and table design and and levels. I think maybe I've introduced in my own small way a slightly weird element by doing that dwarven scenery, because now you can get up off the table quite a lot and have these high walkways, and seems to be working very well in narrative games. But I'm interested to see how much it completely adds to or completely fucks up a regular tournament style game of Age of Sigmar, having the ability to obviously units that fly have got a huge advantage because they can just be up there and then be down somewhere else really quickly. But so those sort of things, as the scenery gets more elaborate and moves up into up the way, so you got a third dimension on the table. What's that doing to things?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really solid point. And in some cases, good things, sometimes abusive things in competitive settings. Depends really what's going on. But like you said, fly being a really key element. We obviously, if we go back and look at something like when we did coverage for Facehammer and we saw Luke use his Gloomtide shipwreck to fly. You had the grots, Richie's grots on the bottom of the Gloomtide shipwreck. But the top was 3 inches away, and so he flew his 3 eels above them. There was a 3-inch gap vertically.
God, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it creates a new design space and does make some units more powerful. But from a narrative perspective, which I think you're either I talked a bit yesterday with Diffie. I think you're either practicing games for tournaments or you're having fun with your friends. And
yes,
and one, it's actually there needs to be some meticulous thought about what people are doing, and the other one, it's just I like the idea that there might be just 5 guys on top of a causeway who are effectively invulnerable, but they're also effectively not doing any combat because they're walking across a causeway. So that's kind of that's cool.
Yeah. No, it is cool, and you're making decisions about these things, and also then it kind of opens up. And one of the things that we're hoping to do soon, because it was quite exciting when we saw we got the box set with the Karadan Overlords and the Tzeentch flyers, the recent one. That's a whole flying army, and then if you've got a table that's made up of floating islands and other scenery, you've got a really interesting different sort of game going on there, where the level of movement across the table is huge. We haven't played it yet to see how it plays out, but it seems to work. And of course, there are other games. So we play. I mean, one of the games I play a lot of is Star Wars Legion, and it really loves scenery like this, where you've got levels and heights and walkways and things.
Oh, really?
So,
could you explain that to me? Because I honestly don't know enough. So,
it's a very good system, and it's got very good movement rules. But core to it is it's quite easy for units to scale things. And of course, the Jedis can do their jumps, so they can jump around. So you've got armies that are actually quite able to move up them across without too many kind of restrictions. So it just works really, basically, and it really avoids the whole kind of getting into a kind of stramash in the middle of the table, sort of, or just hunkering down under scenery and trying to shoot each other, which doesn't work so well in that game. I think once people are going to get closer to each other, and once you've got Darth Vader or Luke or whatever starting to chop people up with lightsabers, it all gets a bit more interesting.
Okay.
But
that sounds really cool, actually. Obviously,
the verticality is good, and I think actually, in fairness to Games Workshop, the verticalness in Warcry is working pretty well, I think, as well. Depends on how you interpret the rules. We're quite relaxed about it. We're quite happy if we think a unit looks like it can climb something, we're like, it can climb, and so it can get up. So, but of course, it has to use up. The great thing in Warcry is because you've got those 2 activations. So if it takes you both your activations to climb to the top of a pillar, or top of one of the dwarven walkways, for instance, you can't do anything once you get up there. So you're a bit exposed. So those sort of things start to come into their own in those. But you need that ability to move up things. And also in Warcry it works quite well, because if your movement was this done on purpose? I'm trying to remember if I measured or not. I might have done. I don't know the height. Anyway, only the faster units can actually climb up one of the tall pillars. The other ones have got enough movement. if you're one of the slower units, like a grot or something, you would run out of movement and fall off it before you got to the top. So they have to take the stairs, whereas something big that's a bit faster, like the dwarves, they have to take the stairs. But other things can actually scale up the things and be moving around. So, yeah.
Slightly more nimble than those dwarves. Talking about dwarves in the chat, Provoked Tree has talked about the fact that he remembers going back to days where dwarves would bring hills along with them to tournaments, and he's a bit triggered by that, which is quite fun. Angle says multiple levels are the best thing in wargaming, and you also, K-Dread also doubled up with you and said Warcry is great for scenery rules, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of the battle plan scenario floor is lava. So just the flyer-based tournament where everything's got the keyword fly. It's quite cool. That's fun.
Yes, yeah. I would definitely like to see that. I mean, and also levels. Of course, levels themselves are a key thing in set design. And if you're designing a stage set or you're designing anything, the worst thing you can do is have it be flat. Just like a flat space. If you can afford it, or if you can do it, you're always going to have a bit something that's raised up. It's just somehow, I don't know. I don't know why it's a rule, but it's obviously visually pleasing to be able to kind of shift from one level to the next and move around. So being able to introduce that.
Maybe it's also like the silhouette, like the
yeah.
I think often about like depth of field shooting, like obviously that exploded 10, 15 years ago where, everyone wanted a bit of Bocky and the person in front was obviously really sharp and everything was out behind me, but it was still there, right? It was still an element of what was in the shot. I think that's, and blocking's obviously so big in filming as well. So it's actually really interesting. Like not quite what I thought we were going to talk through, but like actually, no, I'm being serious. Like it's actually
right.
really creative, and you think more about it. And one of the things that I talked about a lot, because one of the experiences that I've had with 40k recently is I went to a 40k tournament a few months ago, and the scenery is there because it has to be there, and it has to be there in a very specific way in these L-shaped odd blocks, which are super symmetrical and weird. But they're useful for the element of the game. But then because things can fly, you've seen like the oddest rules where like a hover tank was floating on this like precipice, this thin wedge of wall, and it was like, okay, that seems odd. And then they were all parked up there, and I do think, like one of the guys in the chat was saying, it would be nicer to get some more comprehensive movement around terrain rules for both AOS and 40k. I think that's one of the things that they've struggled as designers to put into effect well. But if it works better in Warcry, that's quite cool, I guess.
Yeah, I think Warcry just it lends itself to it somehow. It's just, and also the game is. I mean, I could be wrong. By the way, full disclosure, I'm really bad at playing these games. Absolutely, I love them to bits, but my friends just laugh when I mean, honestly, I think now I was quite disappointed. Amongst the various disappointments about not being able to go to Bobo this year was I was hoping to carry on my unbeaten losing streak, which I've never won a game.
Congratulations, that's a skill.
Well, thank you. And I also managed to not even win the wooden spoon at the last one by getting involved in a car crash. So there you go. So my luck at tournaments is pretty. In fact, actually, my luck was good until I started doing Dark Fantastic Mills. I feel like it somehow sapped my gaming mojo. I mean, the luck. I still love the game, but I feel like I've not won a tournament game since I started. So, but sacrifices have to be made, I suppose. But yeah, no, it's movement stuff. I'd say Warcry is about the movement phase, isn't it? So like you've got those two activations, and it's a you go I go thing. So it's all about having to make decisions about moving across the terrain, and that's and that's where the more interesting the terrain is, the more interesting the decisions become, and it lifts the game in that way.
No, I think it really does. Absolutely. So, talking about terrain, obviously there's a bunch of like terrain you can see on the website, but that's not the only thing that you ended up making, because I've seen trophies everywhere. um, printed by you, and how did that come about and get started?
Oh God, yeah, the trophies. Well, that was but I'm not quite sure who it was who first asked me, so I have to give them both equal billing. It's either John Harper or Gary Hennessy who are entirely to blame for this phenomenon because about the same time they both said to me, "Oh, we've got a tournament coming up. Could you just like put a base on one of your things and we'll use it as a trophy?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Why not? Let's try to do that." So I did that, and then it's like, "Oh, could you make one? Could you make a hammer? Could you do this?" And at the time, I was busy with other things, so being asked to do the trophies was quite a good way of people challenging me to come up with a design, and that would work with the printer. So whenever anybody said, "Could you do this or do that?" I was going, "Okay, I'll give that a go and see if I can work it out and learn a bit more about this process." Because while it's similar in a lot of ways to doing models for animation, it's also different because your end goal is to print it and different, there's different requirements. So yeah, so and it just kind of snowballed from there, and people kept asking, so we kept doing them.
Yeah,
And then eventually somebody said, and I'm pretty sure this was John Harper up here in Scotland, said, because I'd done a small Warhammer, and it's like, "Could you make that full size?" Like life size? And I was like, "Yeah, I suppose you can." Because one of the great things about 3D printing is you just make it bigger or smaller by pressing a button. So, it's like how big. I mean, it takes forever. I mean, they're so slow. So it's insanely slow, especially when you're printing large things. But it's pretty much of a joy. Just again, anybody who casts models will be like, "Oh my God, that'd be amazing!" Because if you decide something's slightly the wrong size, you can just make it slightly smaller, just like a Photoshop picture.
and just shrink it
So
down.
yeah, it's a real luxury. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 3D printing truthfully is the future, especially in these times when you've seen like obviously Games Workshop's production has stopped. Because they have big warehouses and all sorts of other stuff. So and there's a picture in our Discord, by the way, if you guys want to join our Discord, of Trog's giant sword that you printed out. That is huge. That looks great. That's a great trophy. Yeah, I think that. So, have people been approaching you for custom designs? Has that been a thing that's been going on, or like?
Yes, yeah, no, no, they have. I mean, I've been trying to. I was planning this year on trying to do less of them, just because last year it really felt like it was stopping me from doing more terrain designs
Yeah.
because they're trying to fit in the time, and I think it'd be good to expand the terrain ranges a bit more. So I guess, but I mean, obviously this year I'll be doing a lot less trophies, so my wish has come true. I can. Sorry, everybody. I'm sure it wasn't because of that,
You
but
planned it.
yeah.
Smart.
Well, these, sometimes you just got to be something really severe has to happen to force you in a different direction. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun, and I was going to expand the range a bit and sort of mix it up a bit this year, and it's just a really good way of doing it. And also sometimes people ask you to do things you can't resist. Steve at the Bucks Gaming guys who asked me to do the Battle Swan for their Bloodshed in the
That's the
Shires.
most jealous I've ever. Like often when I'm at tournaments doing coverage, I'm already jealous because I want to be playing Warhammer. But then the fact that you
Yeah.
could win a Battle Swan is
Yes.
as the trophy. They're the They might be the best trophies. Like until someone obviously does eventually the Battle Hippos, and then at that point that'll be the trophy for me. Whatever tournament is doing like printed giant hippos, that's the one I'll attend every year. No
It's the
question.
one. Right. You heard it here, folks. I'll do the hippo, and then you've got Rob's full attention
with
forever.
that's it forever with a squirrel riding it, and that's it. I'm just in every time. I'm like, are we all going to the hippo tournament?
But it's but that's the thing. It's like when you sent me the club logo, I was like, yes, I'm in, because we were discussing what I could do, and I was really busy, and I was like, oh, I don't know what I can manage, but I'd love to do stuff, and it looks like it's going to be a great event. And he sent me the logo. I'm doing this. Yeah, it's fine. I'm just doing it. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen, because it's just too much. That was just such a
Yeah, and
fun
in case
design.
you guys aren't sure what we're talking about, that's Bloodshed in the Shire, which we did coverage for last year, and is an amazing event. It's late enough in the year that maybe it'll be on again this year, which is cool. But it's a really well-run event, and it's done by some brilliant guys. If Steve can ever get back from New Zealand, as he's trapped there,
Yes,
yeah,
he's stuck in the earth for the time being.
yeah.
So
So I hope he's well. I mean, not a terrible place to stay, New Zealand, but
no,
I'm sure he
no,
wants to go home at some point.
yeah.
We've had some questions in the chat. Jimmy 1080
hmm
says, "What's in the pipeline? What are your plans for the future?"
Oh God, lots of plans. I mean, obviously, one of the things I draw out, like everybody, I don't draw as much as I probably should, but I draw quite a lot. So the sketchbook is full of like ideas, and to be honest, at the moment, I'm almost not sure what to go with first. It's almost like, oh, right, it's too many things. The immediate future, there's going to be some Space Lizard friendly stuff coming out. I did a thing called the Thuban Gate, which was a kind of Realm Gate proxy beginning of last year, which had a kind of technological Aztec-y Mayan twist to it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to do with that, which is I'm working on at the moment. So hopefully, not getting as much done the last week or two as I was hoping to, but next week I think I'll start getting that out the door, or onto the website, and also the other big thing I want to do very soon, hopefully by the end of, but certainly in April, is expanding on the Chaos Forge stuff we did.
Yes.
So yes, so there's walls and gatehouses and walkways and all kinds of stuff. So you can build a whole 8 points fortress if you wanted to
Amazing. Yeah,
out of it all.
there's a picture in the on the Twitch overlay right now that you can see. And we have a couple of those. You sent us those. We have now, when we do stream, we have a Dark Fantastic Mills board, which is just brilliant. Eventually hoping to get just like you said, one of the things that we eventually would like to do is pretty much cover 4 tables at once when we do coverage at the weekends, and I'd like them to have their own story, so that as much as it's a competitive game that's happening, I think you have to respect what's happening for everyone else, and as much for me as well. I'd like to set the scene. I'd like that there is
Yeah,
competitive player A versus competitive player B, but they're playing over the Chaos Fortress of something, like with a story. I want to write a backstory, film it, make it a whole thing, so people know. So people are like, "Oh, that's cool. That's a place where this battle is constantly happening." I think that's a fun thing that you could add to live coverage that doesn't detract from anything you're trying to achieve by covering a competitive event, but absolutely reinforces some of the strengths of this wonderful hobby. So I think I'm looking forward to that. What's some more questions for you, because I've asked for some and there's a whole
Mm.
bunch. Twitch Village Idiot asks, what sort of 3D printer does he use?
A lot of them. It's like so many. God, I bought so many last month as well. It's not a good time to do it. But anyway, never mind. They'll still be there. So actually, mostly Creality printers, which everybody will know. So the main workhorse in the studio at the moment is the CR10 Pro S, which was the last one they brought out, which is a kind of medium format one. And it's proving to be really good, actually.
That's
Very,
good.
very reliable. I would say I'm not going to say reliable. The one thing about 3D printers is they're incredibly unreliable. They will break. They're just designed to. They're literally designed to break. The technology behind it can only run for certain amount of time before it basically starts to fuck up. And so, if fixing machines like that is something you think you want to have in your life and you're going to enjoy, or at least put up with, then they're great. But if you're the kind of person that when something stops working, you tend to put it in the garage and forget about it, yeah, that's what's going to happen, because they will totally stop working. They just do.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's really good advice for everyone.
Yeah.
Is he still accepting orders? Says MJ Pegasus.
I am. I'm very much accepting orders. We've hunkered down for the situation, but luckily I live in quite a nice small village, and from where I'm sitting right now, I can see the post office because it's literally just across the garden wall,
Nice.
and the post office is still open. So up until such times as people start falling ill, hopefully fingers crossed, God forbid, but at the moment Everything's still running pretty much evenly. We've got a lot less printers, but I can get to the studio. So basically, yeah, we are. I've not been I've been deliberately not. It's a difficult time, isn't it, Rob? It's really hard to I don't know, get the tone right. I want to keep doing stuff at least primarily because I think it's quite good for keeping things normal for everybody. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And for myself.
Hmm.
So it's just like, no, I'll just keep doing stuff. So I'll do product releases and all the rest of it. But I'm really aware that lots of people are in a difficult position, that lots of people don't have money coming in, don't know when money's coming in, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if people want to order stuff, please do, because I could do with the money coming in,
Yeah.
and the postal service is still running. It will be a little bit random. Lovely guy Sean over in Australia last month bought a load of stuff from me. 2 months, in fact, yeah, when the Dwarven Runes came out, and I finally got stuff shipped off to him. 2 boxes went out at the same time. One box arrived, bang on time, brilliant. The other box went on a little journey right around the planet, as far as we could tell,
Amazing.
tracking it. And eventually it ended up back at his door yesterday, so he did get it in the end. So I think there'll be a little bit more of that kind of random international posting stuff going on, and obviously with the flights being curtailed. So aside from all those issues, yeah, we're 100% open for business.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think small business owners in particular, I think it's a tough time for all of us. You and me both at the start were like, we've lost a significant income because of different jobs that we also did as well, right? And I think that there are people listening who are like, well, I've also lost my job. I don't have another source of income. That's awful, and apologise. And yeah, and like you said, like getting the tone right is really hard. I think if you can support either your friends or family or local businesses or businesses that you love, like Dark Fantastic Mills, then you should take the opportunity to do so. I think that's and I'm not trying to. I think that's the best course of action, in my opinion, obviously. Yeah, so it's a tough time. But, I think the best thing, like you said, I think that normalcy is really important. That's why I'm doing these shows and we're having chats with people. Because I think, we had the amazing Smorgan on talking about, do these mixed lists. And I was like, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to not do that for 6 to 9 months. But,
Yes, yeah.
but at the same time, I don't want to be despondent about it because I don't think that's the right way to go. I think planning, getting on with it, getting ready to do these really fun adventures and things is what we should be doing. So, yeah, I agree with you. Some more questions we've had come in. Jimmy says, does Gary smoke cigars, then immediately take a sip of warm honey and lemon to get that beautiful silky voice? That's the question.
He knows my secret, obviously. I was going to say it's a bit early in the day for a whiskey, but it's not really anymore, is it? We're basically on airport rules now. We can just drink whenever we want.
We're on road trip rules. Whatever you like.
I should have thought of that. Yeah, whatever you like, guys. I'll be doing that directly after the call.
I can't wait for people to have to go back to work. This is so early. I'm not getting up this early.
Nobody's going back to work. Basically, the rest of the population are getting to discover how we live our lives. They're not going to want to do it.
And it's great.
Go back to the norm. Yeah.
Yeah. From now on, every meeting will be like, "Can I do this from home? Because it seems like I could," and that's fine. Has Gary had to employ people as the company has grown, or is he just working like a monster?
Mostly working like a monster. Luckily, my family are great and are all really into the hobby as well. So everybody helps out when we're busy, and so because we'd like to expand certain things. I mean, definitely one of the things I might do over the course of the summer is add or pre-painted options to the range. So if people want painted scenery, we can totally do that. But also to anybody on the call, you can just contact me directly through Twitter or email me from the website, or whatever, and I'm happy to talk about commissions. And my friend, Steve Foote, friend of the show,
legend,
is always saying, legend, absolute legend, is always saying, "Can you print that bigger? Can you do those ones smaller? Can we, because you can, so." If you've seen something in the range and it sparked an idea that you would like to see, just get in touch.
Well, so that's one of the things I was going to say. If you're a sculptor, or not a sculptor, sorry, if you're someone who's fairly decent at art, or is handy at doing a bit of drawing, would you ever want people to send you just ideas? Not for like collabs, just someone might be like, I like drawing loads. I would never know how to get this into something physically created, but if I showed you or gave it to you or something, then maybe that would be the case. Is that something you'd be open to? Because I was like, I'm sure there are some people out there who don't realize that they could draw some things, and someone else could make it a physical, real thing, which is a whole different world, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely could do. I mean, it's difficult because of like timing and stuff like that. But I'd say the blanket thing I do, and I do it with the trophies as well, because obviously it's incredibly expensive to hire somebody to design something or to do something for you. You know, some people, my so the way of my offer to people, like what I say to people basically is like, if it feels like something I would want to do as well, and we can like agree on like let's do this, then as long as I can then use it and sell it in the shop, I'm happy to do it. You know what I mean? So like so instead of them paying me hundreds and hundreds of pounds to make a model like as a commercial thing, if it kind of syncs up with what I'm doing anyway, then I'm very happy to to go ahead with that and see where it goes.
That's really fun.
Because yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, it doesn't happen that often. Now I've mentioned it, probably more people will ask. but but even if it's just like saying to somebody says, oh, I've got this army I really like, and its theme is this, and I've always thought a realm gate that looked like a blah blah would be really cool. Then that's great because if I think, oh, you know what, that would be cool, let's do it. Then we'll be doing it, and that's it's as simple as that because ideas come from lots of different directions and. And as I said, the world of Age of Sigmar is so crazy that you can
It's
sit around all day.
it could be anything, but the one thing it can't be, nor should be, as Kadrid has said, it should not be asking Gary to 3D print you a picture of your genitalia. Um,
No, no,
yeah.
no. I get enough abuse for that anyway. My wife called it for a long time as what's Gary doing now? Oh, he's making fantasy dildos because she just thought all the towers and statues and stuff just made her crack up every time. She, what are you making now? It's like you quickly become aware when you're doing these things that the ancient world was obsessed with penises. Basically, that's it. All ancient stuff, just massive erections. That was the world. So
Just everywhere, just like some poor Roman lady
yeah,
walking around, be like, I want to go for a walk today, but I'm just surrounded by dicks. I can't-
yeah, that's what all those pillars are. At the end of the day. So once you kind of like, yeah, so they're just everywhere. So that's the history of human art. That's
uh,
to this date.
So
So
we have a final question from Rambo Squirrel. Totally missed if it was answered or not. Had to go to the shop. Also to stop his daughter from killing herself in the garden. Don't know what was happening there.
oh my god.
There's just loads of people attached to their computer. Like, where are the kids right now? There are some, but do they do different patterns for the movement trays? He's seen some rock ones with them instead, which he really likes, and he was just wondering if there's plans to do different patterns for those.
Oh yeah, yeah, sort of. I mean, it's yeah, definitely. It's on the to-do list. I mean, the to-do list is huge, and I think actually, if again, this is probably one of the things you could you could all successfully to some extent nudge me in the direction you want me to go in by just getting in touch and saying, could you do a blah blah, or because I might just be going, oh yeah, yeah, I could do that, and it's at the moment it's more or less what I think. Oh, I'd quite like to do today.
Well, that isn't that
And
adapting to market pressure. Like if you contacted me like, look, I got a
yes,
load of money and I want to do this thing, I reckon he's your man.
yeah, yeah, they're very happy to. Especially at the moment, I'm basically a captive. I mean, you've got me. Like, and I've got nothing else to do at the moment apart from this. So, I'd everybody take advantage of this because, you know, if it, when the media world starts up again, I'll probably get dragged back into it. But for the time being, this is what
So
I'm doing.
finally, my
So,
dream of having an entire city built of cabbages to annoy Nathan. Homes with little giant cabbages with little windows in and like a little door, like little squirrels live in it. Can't wait. I'm going to be
yeah.
drawing them up
I'm
like a child with a crayon.
I'm already picturing it. I can see it already.
Yeah,
It could
please,
be pretty good actually.
please don't. Well, hey, so have you got any shout outs or anyone you want to say? Uh, you know, uh, big up to anyone around the world as we head off today.
There's too many. So many people have been so supportive, like so supportive over the last 2 years. You're all just like incredible, and it's really good. And it's really I'm really sad that the tournaments aren't happening because we all love that. But let's work on all the different worlds and let's work on our armies and let's just keep sharing everything online so everybody can see it. And well, of course, Adepticon at home is this weekend.
Hmm.
So everybody tune in for that and see that. So Steve Foot's doing a live masterclass. I don't know if he's calling that, but it is a masterclass because he is a master. Somebody's going to give a word. You could choose a random word. It's like he's improvising. It's like he's doing an improv table design and going through the whole process of how his mind works when he's doing that. So that'll be pretty exciting. I think that's on Saturday. And we're sponsoring the painting prizes with vouchers and stuff. The people who win those, they are welcome to spend them on anything, but they could get themselves their own trophy printed if they wanted to circumvent the whole process. So, and hopefully there'll be more things like that happening during the year. So again, if anybody thinks, oh, that looked fun, let's organize something in our country to make up for the fact that people aren't going to be taking their armies to events, then let me know, and if I can help out, then we will.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it looks like a great event. A whole bunch of content creators coming together to produce some really fun stuff. So that's going to be a fun weekend this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. Plus, hearing Steve Foot talk is just the best. Having been to Steve's house and played Warhammer with him, Ben, meaning that we were a game that took, I think, 8.5 hours. Where nothing happened, like zero happened, but it was amazing fun. He's a wonderful person, and for that and that alone, not in I mean, I've saw that Coach and Vince and all sorts of people are doing stuff, so it looks like a really fun thing. So check that out. I'll include all of the links to that, to Dark Fantastic Mills, to Gary's Twitter, to some of the Scottish Twitters that I talked about a moment ago in the show notes below for you guys. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or something like that, or you're listening to the podcast, make sure you stay hydrated. I'll put all that info in so you can click around and say hi. And I think always just say hello to everyone, especially in this time when maybe we've all got a bit more free time, or if you're working really hard, important person, so thank you for your work. There's a guy this is a little bit of an anecdote, but I went to the shop yesterday to get some essentials, and the guy in the shop was telling me that a couple of people had already sworn at him that day, and I was just like, dude, you're a hero, man. He's like, no, I just work at Sainsbury's. I was like, nope, you're a hero. You are making it so you can buy things. You're super important. Like, that's it. That's just the end of that sentence, right? And I think it's really nice. So if you are one of those people who are still really busy because you are doing something valuable or important, then thank you for doing whatever it is you're doing. It's great, right? Well, thanks, Gary. It's been a pleasure, honestly. Also, little side note: when are you bringing out like your read book series? Because I'm in.
I think I might just start by going back and rereading the end times for everybody. That could be it. I'll start casting shortly. No, thank you very much.
Subscriber one right here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really good to chat, probably, Rob. We've only bumped into each other at events in the past because you're always like the busiest man in the world at those things. It's really good to chat, probably, Rob. We've only bumped into each other at events in the past because you're always like the busiest man in the world at those things. So it's been really good to have a chat.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I hope this continues on. If you guys are all out there listening, just want to say a big thank you to you wherever it is. Thank you to as always to everyone on the Wargamer Patreon. It's been lovely. It's been a great show. Yeah, it's been awesome. Join me tomorrow when I'll be talking to Alex Jones. Some of you may know him as a one-armed bastard, but he's a legend as well. We'll be talking some stuff. But have a great week. Look after yourselves. Don't forget to tune in later if you want to. If you want to talk 40k, me, Nikos, and Tom will. I think our plan is to play Tabletop Simulator Space Hulk. So I want you to know that you'll learn nothing later. It will be absolutely irrelevant, but it's going to be, I hope, a hilarious time, which is all I can really care about. So, good. So, Gary, thanks very much. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.